Hi, everybody. This is Bill Thomas. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the executive director at RTC. We'll maybe give a minute or two of further more board members to join on. I'm joining you tonight to update you on some changes that are going on with the board. Um, as of this week, the chair and the vice chair resigned from the CMAC. And so we did not have an opportunity, nor have we posted the agenda for selection of a chair and vice chair, which we will be doing at your next meeting. But for today's meeting, I'm going to ask Jen to run the meeting. So she will function tonight as your chair for the purposes of running the meeting. She's very familiar with your operations, so I think she'll run it similar to what your expectations are. But I do think for the benefit of everyone, if you have in the past, maybe raise your hand or, let Shen acknowledge you because there's a lot of us obviously on here. And it's easy to talk over each other using this form of communication. So I'm going to ask her. Well, I think the first thing is probably the roll call, but I'll ask Shin to take over running of the meeting, and I'm going to speak on the second item that is on your agenda for discussion. So Shin, it's yours.
All right. Good evening, everyone. This is the March 6th, 2024 Citizens Multimodal Advisory Committee meeting. I will call the meeting to order, and I'm going to share my screen right now to show the agenda for today. First of all, let's do roll call. And Lolita, please turn on the recording. Thank you.
Recording in progress.
All right, Lolita, let's go ahead and do roll call. Thank you.
I apologize. I was on mute. Damian Cole.
Here.
David Jacoman.
David here.
Earl Brunelson.
Here.
Eric Ammerman.
Present.
Juan Martinez. Kathy Stanfield.
Here.
Kelly Orr. Michael Gotthard Hutchins.
Present.
Michael Lansborough.
Here.
Michael May. Panas Stouffer.
Here.
Ryan Bernadette.
Here.
Sue Ting Shin.
Here.
And Paul Hewen and Ann Silver will not be joining us this evening. That's the roll call.
Thank you. Item number 2, approval of agenda. Could I please have a motion to approve, or does anyone have any comments to make changes?
My hand is
Motion
up.
to approve.
Hannah, go ahead.
Thank you, Sharon. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Sharon? Okay, thank you. On item 6 on the agenda, on the minutes, I wanted to add that I, Panas Stauffer, expressed support for the South Reno Flex Ride and for increased transit in general in South Reno.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Hearing none, could I please have a motion?
This is Eric. I motion to approve the minutes. David Jockerman, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. So item number 3 is the verbal instructions required by Assembly Bill 219. I will read the instructions. So if you are participating via Zoom to provide public comment during the meeting, please make sure your computer or device has a working microphone. Use the chat feature to submit a request to make a comment. When the time comes to make public comments, you will be invited to speak. If you're participating by telephone to provide public comments, you should have contacted the RTC agency services prior to 4 p.m. yesterday and provided the telephone number you would be calling from, as well as the item you wanted to comment on. When the time comes to make public comments, you will be invited to speak. Okay, so item number 4, public comments. Let's see if we have any public comments right now.
I have somebody who wanted to make public comment, but they said they are having trouble getting into the meeting and it's requiring a meeting passcode. Is there anything I can do or say to help them get on?
Who is speaking?
This is Su Ting.
Oh, hi. Sorry, it doesn't show the gallery unless I click the view.
So does your friend have trouble signing on the Zoom? Su Ting?
Yeah, so they're saying that the Zoom link is invalid, but that they register for their webinar. I guess I don't really know how to help at this point. I'm happy to like try to get their comment and post. I don't know what the rules are at this point. Hang on, I've got a screenshot. It says that Safari cannot open the page because the address is invalid. And then it's asking for a meeting passcode. So do you know if there's a passcode for the meeting? Or do you think maybe he's on the wrong link altogether?
I have a suggestion.
Do you have her
This
email
is
or
Dora Martinez. The passcode is 807-108.
I'm so sorry. I'm going to have you repeat that, but I will write it down this time. Go ahead.
8
It's in the chat.
7108.
8070. Okay. Thank you. Let me check in the chat. I'm trying to do all of it at the same time and it got hard. Thank you. I see it.
I have a question.
go ahead, Damien.
Thanks. Is the link posted on the website, and is the passcode posted on the website, or do we even need a passcode considering it's a public meeting?
Lolita, do you have an answer for that?
Yes, it is posted on the website.
And is the passcode posted on the website?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Is there a link for that?
It is. It's included in the email that you received.
But if we were to go to the website as a member of the public to attend and they didn't get an email, would they have access to it via the website itself?
Yes, they do, because it's posted under the meetings.
Right.
The
Could
CMAC.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, no, that's okay.
Oh, okay. Is there a link for that I could look at?
Yes, I'll post it.
Okay. Thanks.
You're welcome.
I think it's that there's a lot of text right there. And so if people didn't get it set up ahead of time, sometimes I think it's hard to find the right thing in the moment.
Yeah.
It's top of the agenda. The
So-
meeting and the passcode is there. It's just buried, which is why I could not find it quickly.
So,
Sure.
for example, if I were to be on the front page of the website, where do I go?
It's on the agenda.
No, if I were
So-
on the front page of the website, if I were a member of the public wanting to find out if there's a meeting tonight, where would I go?
It's posted under the RTC committee meetings under CMAC, and you can click on the agenda package and the information is on the agenda package.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. But how do I get there from the front page?
So you Google CMAC RTC.
Okay, so
Meeting.
if you're on the
Or-
front page of RTC, is there any way to get there by using the menu on the top, or is it?
There is, Damien. You go to under news and public meetings.
Got it. Excellent. Okay, that's what I wanted to find out. So the agenda is here. Okay, thank you. I'll take a look at that real
Okay,
quick.
Suting, is your friend able to get on the link and the?
I sent the information and I am waiting to hear back or to check in the participants.
Oh, there it is.
Sue, if they get a hold of you, you can let Shan know and we can go back to public comment.
Oh, wow.
Great.
Yeah, we have another item 10 for public comment. Would it be okay for your friend to speak under that item?
Yeah, or I'll let you know when they are ready if they get ready soon. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Item number 5, approval of the February 7th, 2024 meeting minutes.
Hi, it's Pana. I'm so sorry. I meant to speak here. I didn't want to modify the agenda, as I'm sure you figured out.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
This is Ryan. I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed?
Aye.
He is ready, I think, if we are ready.
Suting, let's just wait for item number 10 for public comments. Is that gonna be okay?
Shan, let's just let them, since they called in and it was confusing, let's just let them go ahead and do it now. We can go back to that item on the agenda.
Okay. All right. So is it the phone number 775-287-0302?
I can check, but it's gonna take me a few clicks to get there. Yes. Yeah, it's the one that ends in 0302.
Okay. Okay, we're ready for you ready to talk.
Hi, this is Kai Plascon with the Nevada Bicycle Coalition. Can you hear me, Chair? Or whoever's running the meeting?
Yes.
Okay, I wanted to suggest that as a chair that you select Sue Ting Cheney, who's on your board currently on the committee, and that she is highly respected among the Truckee Meadows Bicycle Alliance and the Bicycle Coalition as someone who can work among many different opinions, and she works really well with people, and she's highly organized. And I think that you will find that she is someone who can lead to help strengthen the committee. That's all I have to comment on, and I really appreciate the work that you all are doing, and thank you for your dedication and your volunteerism.
Thank you, Kai.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to item number 6, receive a presentation on the regional freight plan. Turning it over to Marquise. I'm just gonna stop sharing.
Hi, everyone. Marquise Williams, Transportation Planner here with RTC. And let me share my screen here. So I want to walk us through the RTC Regional Freight Plan. This is a first of its kind in the recent history for RTC, and we're looking to get a sense of the goods and freight that moves through the Truckee Meadows. So I'll be touching on a few points here. The existing conditions are that's the data that we've already collected to this point. Vision and goals, that's why we're doing this project and what we'd like to achieve out of it. Current RTC initiatives, that's how RTC is currently incorporating freight into plans and programs. Strategy considerations are the steps that we can take after this plan is complete. And then the next steps as we look to wrap up this study, we're at about the 75% mark here. What are we doing in the coming weeks and months? So here you see a map. This one is from the Nevada State Freight Plan, and it basically shows truck densities. So how often are there trucks at a given point on our road network? As you might imagine and expect, the I-80 corridor and the US 395 corridors have a pretty high concentration of trucks. That Sparks industrial area in the metropolitan area, so that's Gregg and Glendale, south of I-80, that's where you see the most concentration. And then you're also getting some growth in the North Valleys within Washoe County. And then looking outside the county, you also have the Tri-Center and city of Fernley with a lot of truck activity. All of these roads are part of the National Highway Freight Network. So they fall into one of these four categories: primary highway freight system, interstate, not on the primary freight system, critical urban freight corridor, and critical rural freight corridor. And the important takeaway here is that for RTC to get funding, federal freight funding, the roadway would have to be on this National Highway Freight Network. And to that end, RTC did work with NDOT last year to update the national or the critical urban freight corridors. And the outcome of that was that we now have the North Valleys represented for our urban freight corridors. So now getting into commodity flows. This is federally available data. It's called the Freight Analysis Framework dataset. And this is data for Washoe, Storyline, and Carson counties. So you can see here that we had in year 2022, $60 billion flow through the region. Of that, about 50% was imported goods, with 40% exports. And then 10% of that moved within the region and stayed within the region. And you have a nice trajectory on the right there. That growth in goods movement and commodities is projected to continue growing into the coming decades. No surprise here, our top trading partner is not Massachusetts, it is California by a long shot, and second to that is interstate Nevada commerce. And then this is an interesting one. The main takeaway here is that for the four-county region, 70% of goods moved are on truck. So you see there 5% by air and 1% by rail. That 24% multiple modes just means that a package changed modes over its course. So maybe it started on train and then moved to truck. But the main takeaway here is that when we're talking about freight, largely we're talking about trucks. Another important thing that we're considering here is that 40% of truck traffic on I-80 is through traffic that does not interact with our region. So one thing that we're exploring with this study is how we can capture some of that pass-through traffic and add value to that. So RTC does have initiatives that do involve freight and do accommodate this growth of goods movement in our region. The North Valley's improvements are a great example of that. So Lemon Drive, Military, North Virginia Street, and Moya. We already saw that there is growth in the North Valley's industrially, so we are accommodating that. Other initiatives are Sparks Boulevard, Vista Boulevard, Pyramid Highway, McCarran, and the Verdi area study. The Verdi area study did specifically call out freight related to resiliency. And when, like this past weekend, the I-80 pass closes, we need to consider where those trucks are parking. NDOT is also leading a few initiatives. And these are complementary to freight. So the Spaghetti Bowl, the I-80 widening out to the Tri-Center, the US 395 widening, and the South Meadows extension out to the Tri-Center. We have done a lot of outreach to this point. We've had a stakeholder working group in late January. We've also had one-on-one meetings with several local stakeholders, including EDON, Manufacturing Nevada, the Airport Authority, NDOT, Story County, and City of Fernley. And then we're presenting here with CMAC, and tomorrow we'll be presenting to the TAC. So here's our draft vision. We want to foster a thriving and diverse economy in Northern Nevada through safe and efficient freight transportation infrastructure. And to accomplish that, we have the following goals. We're looking to highlight opportunities to enhance safety. Safety is always a priority in any RTC initiative. We are emphasizing developing parking strategies to expand truck parking, improving multimodal integration, enhance efficiency of freight movement, and incorporate equity and sustainability in freight planning. And then under each of those goals, we in the plan are looking to drill down into strategies. So for enhanced safety, for example, we're looking to reduce truck-involved crashes on freeways and regional roads. For truck parking, advanced communication along I-80. So, having information signs in Fernley, advising drivers that the pass is closed and to look for parking sooner rather than later. So for improved multimodal integration, how can we work with Union Pacific to expand rail intermodal access? For enhancing efficiency, traffic signal optimization, targeted capacity improvements, improving our connections to freeways, and having a regionally coordinated truck route system. And finally, incorporating equity and sustainability in freight planning. Oops, sorry, there's an error there, but we're really, it's a repeat, but we're looking to ensure that we don't have a disparate impact with our freight planning and goods movement on disadvantaged, underrepresented communities. So our next steps, in the coming week, we'll be launching a community survey, and that's to hear from the folks on this call and the general public on how they feel about freight and goods movement in the region. We definitely want to incorporate that community input as well as all the other data conclusions we're drawing into the final plan, and we're looking to have a draft report this summer. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions for Marquise? Okay,
Could you-
I see
could you-
Michael.
Could you please share? Could you please share the slide that showed the interstate commerce again? Just towards the beginning. Thank you. That's all.
Sure.
Michael?
Well, yeah, I did have a question, and this probably falls under the category of not much that RTC can do. It's going to be up to Union Pacific and the truck companies. So, but how feasible is it for that? I think you said 40% that is just passing through to be shifted more to rail rather than trucks. I mean, that seems like low-hanging fruit for reducing the amount of truck traffic and the congestion and safety concerns that causes. But I know that, like I said, that's probably more on Union Pacific and the trucking companies than anything RTC can do.
Yeah, and it's definitely something we're incorporating in the plan and we're looking at here. Is that rail access. We did have a conversation with the city of Sparks, and they do value the rail spurs in that Gregg and Glendale industrial area. So they relayed that they're looking for rail-oriented businesses to move into those so that we can preserve rail access. So not sure that that completely answers the question, but we are looking into rail opportunities.
I think that answers most of it. But I mean, kind of the other part of that is, I know some of the goal is that we want some of the through traffic to actually stop while it's here. I mean, as you said, the value added, but there's going to be the people who will just pass through no matter what. And it seems like the ideal way for them to just pass through would be on a way that's not putting wear and tear on our roads and causing traffic, if that's something that's possible to incentivize.
Yeah, I will definitely take note and explore the options there.
So Marquise, if I can real quickly, just getting to Michael's point, where the value is of a comment like that is we can bake this into this plan. So to the extent we don't control, like you said, the railroad nor the private truck companies, certainly by having our plan adopted, when there's opportunities for us to be involved in their decision-making or make choices about how we build infrastructure by having, that kind of a statement in there, it helps focus on what we're looking for as a community. So it is valuable to have those kind of comments in there, and time will tell whether our persistence on those kind of things can actually change those private parties, but they do have value in a planning process like this.
Okay, we'll have Suting.
Can somebody explain to me where the Tri-Center is, please? And thank you.
Yeah, so that's USA Parkway, so about 30 minutes east or 20 minutes east of Reno Sparks on I-80, and it's where the Tesla Gigafactory and Panasonic and several other large businesses and warehousing efforts have set up shop.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Pana?
Thanks so much for the presentation. I know that your equity half of the slide didn't show up. I was very excited to see it, but I wanted to ask, is there any focus on environmental justice and climate change in the planning process? And if not, is that something you can incorporate? I know it may require coordination with the health district, which does air quality.
Yeah, I know you mentioned the equity piece, and so, like I said, ensuring that we don't have a disparate impact on disadvantaged communities. But also, I think there is a that signal optimization kind of reduces truck idling if deployed properly, and so that will have at least some environmental benefits. And beyond that, I think that we will take, with our conclusion section, a good look at environmental sustainability options.
Thank you. Damien?
Hi, yes. Thank you for the presentation. Could we go back to the slide that showed the map? I believe it was showing like the heaviest concentrations of traffic, if I'm not mistaken. There it is, right there, that one. The red line, is that basically the I-80, the entire east and west corridor? How much of that traffic is through traffic and how much of it is destined for the Reno Sparks Bowl?
So I guess the way this map works is it's just GPS data, so it's not actually count data. It just shows the amount of trucks at a spot at a given time.
Got it.
But that stat on a later slide, that 40% of truck traffic on I-80 is through traffic, that I think maybe answers your question. So 60%, the majority of this traffic is at least stopping in our area, but yeah, there is that chunk, that 40% chunk that is just passing through.
And do you know, because I know that there's plans for expanding the I-80 east of Sparks, heading out to Trick. You mentioned that there's a plan to expand the 395. I'm guessing that's 395 north through North Valley, is all the way through Lemon Valley and to the border. Is that what I'm guessing?
That's correct. Is if anyone from RTC can touch on that project at all.
Well, that's why I just wanted to make sure I understood because it was in the presentation. So I know that North Valley has been a big concern since there's a high amount of residential and just urban growth, suburban growth, I should say, in that area. And right now, a lot of people have been commenting about the dangerous state of Old Virginia, and it's being the only surface road that is accessible by anything other than a car. If you're in North Valleys and want to get down to Reno, City Council of Reno has been talking about that a lot, and I'm really hoping that they take a look not just at the 395 but also the surface streets. It's a big concern. When it comes to the I-80 traffic going east to Trick, and when Governor Lombardo mentioned that expansion plan, one of the things that occurred to me, and I know this directly doesn't come with the presentation you gave, but it has to do with freight, the increase of freight. And the reason why I was asking about the increase of freight traffic destined to, for instance, like Sparks, Vista, East McCarran, all the way through where UNR is expanding and, or not expanding, but selling off its agricultural area. On East McCarran, there is a bike path that has been in existence on East McCarran, going from, I believe it's Loma Linda, all the way up to close to the I-80, where it just stops. And I would absolutely adore it and appreciate it if the gap between Prater all the way down to, let's say, Gregg, I believe is where the bike path ends, was fixed. If they're going to be expanding that, but here's the problem with that is that I heard that it's only going to be from Sparks Boulevard eastward. I don't know why. Probably because I'm guessing, you could probably answer this, but I'm guessing it's because it's so tight in that corridor between the Big Nugget all the way over to Sparks Boulevard. If you were to expand the freeway in that section, you're looking at destroying Victorian Boulevard and or Avenue, or at least, messing with it. It's a very tight squeeze. So, but I do anticipate that that's going to be where a lot of truck traffic is. That's where it's historically gone, is McCarran. I know there's a truck stop there right next to Western Village, all of that area. But in the bike network, I know bikes don't have to do with freight specifically, but I think it would be a great opportunity for RTC to work with NDOT and finally close that gap. The only way you can get north of that freeway right now is some very sketchy areas that don't have any bike facilities at all from the bike freeway, the Truckee Meadows bike path. So, yeah, I would really like it to be examined, and because I know that. Oh, okay, I'm going to stop, but thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your comment. I think there are two separate NDOT projects. So there's the Spaghetti Bowl project, which does include that nugget area, and then the I-80 expansion eastward. So maybe that's why it starts at the at Sparks Boulevard. And I'm tangentially working on the active transportation plan, which we do plan to present in front of this body. So looking forward to your comments there during that presentation.
The other thing too I was going to ask is in regards to mass transit, I think that McCarran Loop has been a wasted resource. I've always wanted to have a bus route that would essentially go around the loop instead of going all the way downtown or going to Centennial Plaza. I think it would be great to have a connector. And if the freight plan is also looking at this as well, that could cut down on the amount of automobile surface traffic on that ring road that would automatically give more room for freight that I could only imagine is going to be using McCarran quite heavily, especially in the Sparks area. So yeah, just an observation. It's been in the back of my mind.
We are looking at workplace access as part of this freight study, which does include transit. So we will be considering transit as part of this effort.
Thanks.
And for the record, Jim Gee, the Director of Public Transit. Damien, I know this is a little off topic, but we've studied the McCarran Loop before as a transit option, and it's really expensive because of the loop structure and the frequency needed and just the number of miles. I can share that info with you if you want, but long story short, it's several $1 million to build a constructive route around the loop.
Yeah, I'd love to see it. I know that there's plans to increase multimodal infrastructure on McCarran Loop. And originally in 1975, when they were still building it and planning it, originally the separated bicycle facility was supposed to be going around the entire loop. It never got put in. But yeah, there's expansion projects that I've heard about for increasing in the multimodal capabilities of that. And I know it's all NDOT territory. That's what makes it a little bit more difficult. Same thing with, Kitsky and every other state highway, Pyramid. Yeah, thanks.
Hi, Marquis.
Ryan?
Yeah. Hi, Marquis. Thank you for your presentation. I think specifically I'm interested in, what research is being done between the intersection of, semi-truck and freight traffic and bike lane infrastructure on those roads. Specifically, if you're thinking about expanding or changing those roads, I think it'd be great to take a look at making sure those bike lanes never intersect in any meaningful way with those semi-trucks. Because I think we've all, been in a bike lane and had a semi-truck trying to make a right turn. And, sometimes they'll have to pull out super far to kind of make that right turn around. And they might hop over the sidewalk and the curb in the process. And I think, when you're on your bike, you're not even sure if those semi-trucks can see you in the first place. And so being that close to any semi-truck is just not a great place to be. So I think especially if there's any opportunity to kind of completely separate the bike lane, make it more of a bike path next to those truck routes, I think that would be perfect.
You see my hand there? Yes, absolutely. It's a death trap right now.
Yeah, thanks for your comment. Not to be a broken record, but that please provide that feedback as well at the active transportation plan presentation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Judy?
My question is there any coordination between RTC and the addition of casinos? I'm specifically thinking of the Legends Casino. because it slows down the bus route when people who have been gambling all night or whatever they're doing come on early in the morning.
Can I ask a question about that, Judy? To you?
Sure.
Yeah. So where do the trucks, or not traffic, excuse me, where does the most traffic from that casino exit and enter? Because I'm seeing it like right next to the marina.
It's on the Route 21.
Got it. Okay. So that takes Lincoln
and there
Way.
were people this morning who slowed it down by 10 minutes, which slows the people who ride the 21 get on the Lincoln line usually. And if you miss that 6 o'clock Lincoln line, you're half an hour late.
I apologize to interrupt. While we have Marquis, are there any questions regarding the Nevada Freight Plan specifically?
I'm not sure if it's more question or comment, but I think I heard him say that one of the things was better communicating when the pass was closed earlier. I have been out in rural Nevada before in the winter, and I've seen signs as far away as the US 95 entrance to the freeway warning that the pass is closed, but those signs never indicate where the places before the pass are that you can actually park and wait it out. So it might even just be a simple matter of working with NDOT on, hey, add a second line to where that warning about the truck parking available in Fernley or truck parking available in Sparks, whatever the case may be. Yeah, and that by itself would probably be a good third to halfway solving the problem.
Yeah, and we are, I think you hit the nail on the head there. We are working closely with NDOT with their statewide parking notification effort. So contributing as we can for our region, but they are working on improving that early notification system.
I just have one more quick question. It'll be a quick one, I promise. Is there any thought being given, or has there been any thought being given? Yes?
I think Pana raised her hands first, so
I'm sorry. I didn't know she was. Oh, sorry.
First. Thank you.
Sorry, Pana.
I'll try to keep it really quick too. I guess what I wanted to say, which I don't think came across clearly enough, is I'm really encouraged now hearing Marquise talk about all the potential connections with the intermodal plan. I am not understanding through this presentation if highway expansion is a foregone conclusion. The marker I'd like to leave here tonight is that it not be a foregone conclusion, and that there be a really explicit focus on looking back historically on some of the commonly understood, harms that have been caused by freeways, especially on disadvantaged communities who experience environmental justice issues, but also looking ahead and explicitly making these kinds of connections that you're talking about in a way that will certainly serve all these important freight goals that you're talking about, but also explicitly have the goal to reduce single passenger vehicle transit on the highways, the things that everyone else is talking about, to really explicitly make those connections that trucks and more highways are not just a foregone conclusion, and the only way to get more funding has to be with that foregone conclusion. So I hope that makes sense. Thanks for letting me share that.
Yeah, thanks for the feedback there. Yeah, thank you.
Damien?
Ah, yes, thank you. Has there been any thought given to creating in some way, and yes, I know it would be very expensive, a bypass for I-80 for those heading to and from Trick, starting at perhaps around the Lockwood area and heading down to Veterans Parkway near South Meadows Parkway, all of those areas there. All of that does contribute to surface traffic on the I-80, especially, I mean, all of the commuting traffic, things like that. The reason why I bring this up as an idea is because a lot of the carpooling has been removed by Tesla. Now you either drive or you take the shuttles, which most people don't want to take the shuttle. So it might be a wonderful opportunity to, see if there's any possibilities, either by rail commuter, which also is kind of like a shuttle. People don't want to use it because they don't want to park their cars. Or I shouldn't actually, I shouldn't assume that. I shouldn't assume that. If there's a good rail system, they would use it. Partner up with UP with that. Or hit up Elon. Say, hey, you got those boring tunnels. Let's see them in action. Let's go from Trick down to South Meadows Parkway, where tons of suburban sprawl is in the works. And I think right there would completely alleviate, and not only that, but create redundancy for the case of when there is an accident, and there's plenty of them. I recently, just an anecdotal, spent 9 hours getting home one night because of 4 pileups when the snow came. Got off work at 6 o'clock, got home at 3 a.m. because there was 4 pileups, one of them including a big rig and several automobiles. When that happens, no amount of highway expansion is going to help you out. You need to have a bypass. Problem?
Yeah, Damien, I believe NDOT is doing a study right now
Oh, great.
to kind of look at the connections from South Meadow to Troy Center. Is a planning study ongoing.
That would be
that will answer
amazing.
your question.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay, hearing none, we're gonna move on to the
Thank you, Marquise, for the presentation.
any other questions or comments? If none, can I get a motion to acknowledge receipt of the presentation?
Motion.
Just one
I
quick
think 3 of us are motioning.
Marquis, could
Ryan,
you?
do you have a question?
Yeah, I was just a little bit confused on where we can, it looks like there's gonna be more public comment on this plan in the future. Marquis, could you post that information in the chat possibly?
Yes.
Thank you.
Oh,
Sure.
I mean, I'm sorry. I was saying yes, like I agree with you. Sorry, that wasn't him. Sorry. God, I gotta watch what I say with this mic.
All right, thank you, everyone. So do I have a motion?
I'll motion.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item number 7, discuss the purpose of the CMAC and solicit information and advice from members on the way on ways to improve functioning of the CMAC. So this is information only, and no action is needed. Bill will be leading this discussion here. Thank you.
Thank you, Shan. So what I wanted to do this evening is, I know there's been with your chair and vice chair leaving, some of the conversations that's been had recently, a lot of misinformation that's being shared in terms of what the CMAC is or isn't doing and how things have or haven't been done in the past. I really want, and I talked to not all of the board members, but I called, I talked to the previous chair and vice chair, and I've talked to a couple members. Certainly anybody who wants to talk to me, I would welcome the opportunity to do that, to share your opinions individually with me on what is and what isn't working in terms of your experience being on the board. We understand that you all are volunteers. You're not paid to do this. Your time is as valuable as anybody else's. So in the big picture, what it's all about is making these meetings as productive as we can for you, which means not only presenting the information in a way that's useful, giving you opportunity to understand things, but also respecting that there's quite a few members, at least the way it's structured now, and there's only so much time that I think we can reasonably ask of the members. And so what we're going to embark on, and I heard this from pretty much everybody who I talked to, that there's a need probably for one orientation when people come onto this board to understand, what exactly is this board's purpose and how is it going to work? And in the end, how is your time and effort going to be a contribution to what we're trying to do in our community as far as transportation? Secondly, we want to make sure that the relationship between the staff who's here to support the workings of CMAC and you as board members is effective and efficient. So the first step I wanted to do, because I got the sense from talking to board members that expectations are blurred and process is blurred. So we're going to make a concerted effort to clarify those two things. In doing this, we obviously want you to hear and understand what RTC's expectations are of CMAC. And then secondly, have opportunity for all of you to share what your expectations are and what your thoughts are, and hopefully get to a place, both from the standpoint of everybody's expectations, but ultimately also with the operations, that everybody feels they're heard, yet everybody feels respected in terms of the time they're given, because all of you are given the same amount of time. And I think to be effective working in groups like this, it takes management. And sometimes management of meetings is not pleasant, and it can be curt and people can take it as offensive. But at the end of the day, with this many people participating, somebody has to manage the meeting. And it's not a negative thing to manage the meeting. I think it's positive. We are very much at RTC appreciative of your time and effort. We are going to try to help direct your energy and your effort in ways that are most productive. And if you feel like you don't understand or you're offended about the way we do something, and you don't want to talk here, which sometimes is not the most effective way, please feel free to call me, to call any of the staff. And our end goal is to make this work for all of you and make it productive for the board and make you a valuable voice or sounding board for what we do at RTC. Having said that, I asked Adam, who's our legal counsel, to talk tonight about exactly what the expectations are and the powers and duties are of the CMAC, so all of you can understand that, and there's not speculation or uncertainty about what this board does or doesn't do, what this board is empowered to do and not do. Certainly after we have these conversations, you can share your opinions and thoughts, but it is important for any group like this to understand what its purpose is. And so Adam's going to share with you information of exactly what the purpose of CMAC is, how it's structured, and then we can have a conversation about that. As far as operations, we will do some orientation going forward. Obviously, the first step is to get a new chair and vice chair on board, make sure we support the chair and vice chair on the operational side, and make sure from the standpoint of the board that how we present information and when we present it is most productive in terms of your time and energy. So with that, I will hand it over to Adam, and then we'll give some time after Adam talks for you to have questions. And again, this is not the end conversation. This is a starting conversation to hopefully resolve the friction that's occurred recently that I think is counterproductive to what I think all of you want to do as far as taking time out of your evening once a month to share your thoughts and energy. So Adam, if you wouldn't mind.
Thanks, Bill. And hello, everybody. to what Bill's talking about, I'm going to focus on two areas. One is the purpose of the committee as it's been created, and the second is going to be about action items and the practice that there's been and what's actually legally required. So, in terms of the purpose of the committee, the purpose of the committee is very specific. It's to provide information, advice, and recommendations on certain planning documents that are identified in our public participation plan, and it's to provide information and advice regarding transit benches, shelters, and bus stops. And so, the information and discussion items that are presented to this committee should be tailored to those topics. And I think that going forward, there are going to be some ways to present them in a way that more clearly reflect which of those topics they're related to and how they relate to them. And so that's going to be part of the efforts Bill's describing. In terms of action items and the authority of this board or this committee, the committee is not legally required to take action to provide information, advice, and recommendations on those topics that we just talked about. It's not required under the law. The action really has no legal effect, and it appears to be creating a lot of unnecessary confusion. I can explain a little bit more about why that's the case, but that's my legal opinion to RTC staff. And so what I'm recommending is that we stop placing unnecessary action items on the agenda. The only items that need to be included on agendas are the approval of meeting minutes, which is required by the open meeting law, and elections to fill vacancies in the position of chair or vice chair, or to elect the chair and vice chair. And so, I think if we were to do that going forward, it would eliminate a lot of the unnecessary confusion that, has been created. And I think it would go a long way in helping the functioning of this committee along the lines of, what Bill described in terms of the intent of RTC. So with that said, I can answer any questions, or if there's anything I can be more clear about, I'd be happy to try to answer those questions.
We have a question from Suti.
I just want to make sure I understand what you're saying. So for example, for this particular meeting, if it was to change the way that you're saying, instead of making a motion and seconding and then voting on receiving the presentation, we would just kind of assume that the presentation was received because it was in the agenda, but we wouldn't motion, second, or vote on it.
Correct. Yeah, all items, that relate to the information, advice, and recommendations that the committee provides would be presented as discussion and information items. It would allow for the kind of back and forth and engagement, and hopefully even better engagement. That's how it would be presented. And there would be no items similar to that would be identified as for possible action that would require a vote.
Okay, and then I had a question about adding agenda items. I know that it's in the agenda for members to bring up potential agenda items. I don't know that is happening a lot, but when and if it does happen, I guess just some examples of what those might be would be really helpful. I don't know that I've seen a lot of additions of agenda items. Sometimes it's referring back to something that we had questions about and wanted to see again. I just want to make sure that opportunity was still there to introduce topics to be talked about at the next meeting.
I think the opportunity is always there to suggest items and to ask for them. And I know that staff always tries to accommodate them when they can. But to Bill's point, there's only so much time that the committee has to do some of these things. And so to present them at meetings has to be weighed against, what is the purpose that the CMAC is, exists to serve. And so it's a balancing, it's a process question. I don't think I have a legal answer to that.
Okay, thank you.
So if I can, to get to maybe more specifically what Adam's saying is, in the simplest way, think of it this way. The things Adam mentioned are things you have to take action on. We're going to continue to present items of importance to RTC, and there's specific ones that are identified to the board. The purpose of us presenting them really is to get your information. A lot of what I heard tonight is what we're trying to capture, which are questions and comments and things that need to be considered that might not otherwise, because everybody has a different perspective, be included in the analysis. However, the decision on things that happen is not weighted in terms of a yes, no, up, down vote by this board, because that's not the way it's structured. So going forward, it's not about repressing or preventing people from talking. It's just making it clear that if you take a vote on something, it's going to be your decision as a group to try to reach consensus if you need to by vote. What would be best in terms of helping in the decision-making process, which ultimately the board is the only one by law that makes decisions, is information. Having information that's the CMAC approved or denied is really not helpful when someone's trying to make a decision. What is helpful is the context and the comments you provide, and most importantly, any narrative or thoughts that go with the comments, so they as decision makers, then their minds are open or they're thinking things differently. So that's how you guys can be most effective, is bringing a depth to the comment that can help somebody who's making a decision understand why you said what you said and how it bears in terms of what they're trying to decide.
And the
Yeah,
only
and I
thing
just
I'd add to
wanna-
that. Oh,
Mhm,
sorry.
go
Go
ahead.
ahead. Suting?
Oh, I was just gonna say, and I appreciate that in the minutes that has been captured, right? Like it says who said what, and it summarizes the what they wanted to make sure was recorded from that. So I appreciate that whoever is taking those minutes is doing an excellent job and trying to capture some of the conversation, so that when somebody is wondering like, hey, what did CMAC think of this thing, that they have a place to go look for it. So thank you.
Damien?
Yes, hi. Okay. How many of the comments that we make during these meetings make it to executive board meetings, and to what depth are those comments mentioned? I mean, we spend like a good hour here or so usually. That seems to also be the beef of, so to speak, of the meetings, at least in my opinion. That's what it should be about, is the actual discussion of items, things like that. Even though pretty much the only thing that we have been doing for anything brought to us by RTC has been acknowledging presentation, which to me is the bare minimum. If nothing that we act upon here has to legally be applied or abided by RTC at the board meetings, personally, I don't see any use for voting in the first place. Secondly, I really think that if RTC wants to get the most out of these meetings from us, it would be much more beneficial to have member created items for the agenda that we ourselves could bring, things that we're concerned with, things that people that we talk to are concerned with, and that way we can actually take action, which would probably be consensus of, yeah, this is a good idea. Let's tell RTC about this. Let's spread the word. Let's give them more information, which actually is what I really thought this whole committee was going to be about, is, hey, let's talk about some of the issues that we find important, rather than just receiving information from the board, from staff, where all we say is, yep, okay, we saw it. Like, yeah, that's, I appreciate the presentations. I think they're wonderful. I think they could be made more accessible for people who are visually impaired. We've had some comments about that before, and I think that's absolutely important. But yeah, the actual comments that we make here at these meetings, I've seen some of the comments that were put into the minutes for the executive board meetings, and it's barely a sentence. Like, all of this talk that we're doing, all of this time that we're spending trying to give information, and sometimes it's very minimal. Sometimes it's just, yep, the CMAC approved something. I think we could be doing a lot better about that, and to give not just staff, but the board much more good, positive information that they could use. Because we are only an advisory board, that's the thing. But if it's not legally required for RTC to even consider whether or not we've taken action, I don't see the point of it. I think it would be much more beneficial for RTC to actually hear way more of our comments as a committee, maximize public exposure so that way people on the outside can make public comment at these meetings, so that way the public can hear it. I think we need to get rid of the passcode. I don't know if there's some specific technical problem that deals with Zoom, maybe to keep out trolls or something. But I just looked at the agenda, and it's in that gigantic first paragraph, and it's in small text, and it's all run together. I'm a web designer. That's like the worst way to do it. It's in a PDF that's hidden, and you have to go like 2 layers deep to actually see that. What if we put that on the table on the website for the agenda items? Click here to view the meeting. That would be the easiest. I think we should make it as easy for the public as possible to know that these meetings even exist. A lot of comments that I hear is like, well, what's CMAC? What's that about? Bringing back the live broadcasts to YouTube. If we're going to remain on Zoom, let's expose this for the fullest, the way that we started in 2020 during the pandemic. I thought that was great. I love watching those meetings. I love seeing how the interaction is. I love seeing the camaraderie, the chat, the ideas. It gives people good history. They can go back. It's part of the public record. Audio recordings are what is legally required for a public body, but these are visual, right? So we're seeing who's talking. We're seeing, it's like any other board meeting. We're seeing the presentations, and it's if IT staff is what's needed, I volunteer. I'm broadcasting this right now. So, it's possible. It doesn't take a lot of work. Let's make it official. And, I can provide technical experience behind this to help out. Giving us a clear avenue of instructions on how to introduce agenda items. To whom do we give them? The chair, staff, is whenever we have an idea for an agenda item, is item number, 9 or 10 is announcements. Is that the only time we can do it, or can we do it during the middle of between meetings and give them to RTC and say, yes, I have an idea for an agenda item? I would preferably not prefer that, because anything that is business being conducted should happen in the public. So I think we need to have more, better, clear, and concise instructions. Yeah, exactly, Sue. Absolutely. I'm sorry, I'm reading her comment in the chat. The chat that's going on, it's being recorded, but we don't get that in the audio recordings that are only available on request. So why are we recording them? Doesn't make sense. We should be maximizing this. We should get the public as much involved in this as possible. We're only advisory. We're appointed. Let's use this to the most of our ability, so that way we can help the community. That's what I really see about this. And I also would love to hear more about the background of CMAC, not just simply the purpose of it, but how it began. My information given to me is that it was a culmination of 2 previous committees, one of them having to do with bicycles and the other one having to do with mass transportation, and they were put together into one somewhere around 2012 or 13. I don't know. And also who appointed this body together. When I was speaking to the Attorney General's office, she said that's very important for us to know what exercise of powers that we have, the amount of authority. And she did say that this is part of the public process. So it's also my understanding that a lot of complaints have been made in the past to the Federal Highway Administration about things that had been bypassed that had been talked about in this meeting. Not this meeting, but the predecessor to it. I think it was TAC. Yeah, a lot of concerns. So I think that's about it for now. Lack of procedure. That's the thing. The statement of purpose and policies is very lacking in rules of order, how to address people. Do we address people directly, or do we go through the chair the way that a normal committee would be handled? Not to make things super stuffy, but considering that we are in a virtual setting, I think it would really help. Not simply just raising the hand in the chat, but the thing about meetings, especially if you read this book right here, Robert's Rules of Order, is that one of the defining features of a deliberative assembly, meaning any gathering of people to get together, is the ability to have equality in auditory capabilities. And that means using visual cues, using body language to talk to one another, and also being able to interject when necessary. The chair is supposed to be handling all these things. I know people really get worried about Robert's Rules of Order because it reads like a phone book, but think of it as nothing different than this. This is the first edition of Werewolf the Apocalypse. It gives you the dice rolling system. It gives you the characters, things like that. Basically, it's a guide for a game master to conduct a meeting fairly and conduct business, and the story is up to us, but it gives us the basic ground rules. That's exactly
so Mr.
what
Cole,
this is. Yeah.
maybe that's a good point for me to jump in on. And
Oh,
first,
thank you.
I appreciate, I respect your right to have your opinions and your beliefs. I'm glad that you're expressing them. That's, I think the purpose of this initial meeting. But let me add a little bit more detail about what I talked about in terms of action, because I think that could be a little bit helpful. This committee does not have any legal authority to exercise, and it hasn't been delegated decision-making authority by the RTC. That means it doesn't have to make decisions, as that term is used under the open meeting law. And as a result, it doesn't have to take actions and really doesn't need to be worried about deliberation on those actions. And because it doesn't have to take actions, it doesn't have to vote. And because it doesn't have to vote, it doesn't have to make complicated motions. And it doesn't need something like Robert's Rules of Order to help with that type of parliamentary procedure. And so when I say that this entity is not, this committee is not legally required to take action, it doesn't have any legal effect. If RTC staff were to stop identifying these as action items, it would eliminate all of that confusion. And it would focus on the type of discussion and engagement and information sharing that, really is the value that this entity creates. And I understand your question about, okay, how is it shared with the board or how is it shared with others? And I think those are valid questions. But the other thing to really remember is a lot of the value is what is conveyed and discussed and, the engagement that happens with RTC staff and how they, maybe are able to make their planning efforts better as a result of that. So it's not just the RTC board, it's also staff. And what staff does is it provides a monthly report to the board, and it talks about what was discussed with the CMAC and, what were the topics that were addressed, maybe what were the things that happened in the past. It said they approved this, but that doesn't really say much. What really says something is that, we talked to this is what we learned, this is what came out of it, this is maybe how things changed. And so in terms of, understanding that part of the process better, I think that would be a good place for staff to kind of focus on.
And and I think looking at the monthly reports would be a wonderful thing. I think that should also be given to the public on the website to see what's actually being given.
And it is, it's part of our agenda packets for the board monthly, and it's posted on our agenda and part of the packet that's made public like any other board packet materials.
Now, legally, we're not required to do all these things, but what if we as a body choose to? What if we say, hey, let's do this, and we all vote on it and we start deciding to do it? Are we allowed to do that? In other words, like discussing additional items, taking action on things that are not presented to us by RTC, basically have more autonomy. Is that kosher?
Ultimately, no. RTC staff makes those decisions. You have your input sought on it, and as Bill's describing, you're trying to find a better way to make sure there's optimal engagement, but the committee doesn't decide that, and it doesn't decide whether it takes action on items.
So if I decide to make an agenda item, RTC can choose not to allow it?
If you, Mr. Cole, create an agenda item and ask RTC to put it on, yeah, they could decide not to do that.
I see. All right. Well, thank you for that information.
Suti?
I think there is a possibility that the way that things are being described, it's just trying to figure out like, how is this valuable? And I think you're right. I think there's a way for it to be valuable without it being some of the things it's been. But just knowing like who's the intended recipient of the comments that are made here, like who is expected to read the CMAC meeting minutes. It's fine if it's not the RTC board. Like I don't know that the RTC executive board needs to know about and read about everything that is discussed. Is it RTC staff? Is it the people who are here presenting? Is it certain departments? I think just knowing how the work that gets done here gets to the people who need to read it, and for us to understand who is the target audience for some of the things that are said. I think that will just help provide context and justify sort of the time that we do, right? Volunteer and staff is here, volunteers are here, that we're spending time on this, and it's important, and it's just making those connections to seeing where and how it is being received.
So Sue, if I can, in terms of the practical effect of conversation at this board, each and every, like Marquise tonight, Marquise is assigned and ultimately responsible for the freight study, which includes everything anyone says through the whole process because he manages the process. So first and foremost, items that come through this board, the staff person who's working on it, they're responsible for making sure they listen and hear what is said by the board. Sometimes people feel like they were ignored, and it could be from the fact that it's not a perfect or maybe even as good as it could be in terms of an information loop. But the comments at the first level and probably most important level affect the staff. Secondly, the board gets it all. And ultimately, I guess the best way I can describe this, any individual board member who feels like they want to elaborate or share more has the authority, because you're still private citizens, to go to the board and present your information. I think the most value that groups like this have, having done this for many years, is if there are challenging or difficult issues, it's working them through as a group, because that'll be a stronger recommendation than it would be an individual person saying, I want this thing. And I'm not trying to disrespect anybody, but as you can imagine, decision makers get a lot of people from a lot of different angles talking about things that are of their interest. And so they have to sift through that and make a decision in terms of what they do and don't do. And to the extent you get a very diverse group like this to kind of weigh all the comments and say, okay, there's 15 things we said. At the end of the day, here's the two most important and here's why. That's valuable to a decision maker. Having 15 bits of information to a decision maker with everything else basically leaves it to the decision maker to decide what parts of what they hear they're going to use. We pass on to them all the information. We have to do it to be effective, to kind of condense it. You can imagine if we have a verbatim of 2 hours of your meeting given to each of our board members, how much time, because they have like 7 or 8 of these boards that they get that give them information. So it's not a negative, it's just the reality of the world they live in, having to be on many boards, trying to get public input, trying to make sense of all of it. So that's what I think is most valuable. All of you come in from a different angle in terms of what your interests are and what your knowledge is. And to the extent you work as a group to sift through the more pressing ones, that's the most value you give to the board and to the staff.
Well, I think my only request from that is if there is a way for this group to see what is being drafted to be presented to the board, so that, and Bill, I understand and I hear what you're saying, and I don't expect anybody who is not here to listen to 2 hours of this meeting. But just to see what is being what is being passed on at the RTC board level. And maybe there's no comments, and maybe whatever who wrote down is fine. But just to have a little bit of insight on that, so that if there was something that we like really agreed on and really wanted to make sure it came across, got included in those 1 or 2 summary items, would be great.
Well, that's the purpose of the minutes, but if that's not working, we can certainly explore that as a group, but I hear what you're saying, Sue.
Thank you.
Anan?
Just building on what Bill was saying and what Sutang was just saying, I really appreciate during these meetings and even by email how Jim and Graham and Shuen will engage in a back and forth and say, oh yes, we thought of that before, we tried it before, we haven't thought of that, we will consider that. That feedback is so valuable to me and makes me feel like my contribution is worthwhile. So, for example, today when I was asking for the minutes to be revised, and I know I accidentally spoke on the wrong item, it's because I thought we had a really important conversation about how there is actually demand for transit in South Reno, for example, which is what I was talking about, but that the common perception is that there is not demand for transit. So I didn't see that recorded, and when I brought it up, nobody said, yes, we will change that. So I am still wondering, is that going to be documented? Is anyone outside of this virtual room going to know that there were multiple people who wanted that to be a more prominent piece of information?
That will be in the minutes, and just as we perfect our process, what probably should have happened was in the motion that was made, it should have been clarified that your comments were added to the minutes.
Great, thanks. Yeah,
and a lot of this is evolving as a group, a working group, right? So I think what you gave is a good example where something of importance was missed, and when you say that thing is those things, we will make sure they're in the minutes, unless there's a dispute amongst the board, where somebody might say, well, I don't think we really agreed to that. That's what's valuable. But yes, your change will be reflected in the minutes.
Great. And that's a procedural thing that has happened before, but I didn't hear it today. So I know I've been harping on procedure a lot, and I've heard others reflect that, but I'm a trained facilitator, and I heard you say, Bill, that managing meetings can be difficult and can be stressful. It doesn't actually have to be when the group has agreed to norms, which it can do when the procedures or the processes don't have them and don't have to, because they're not legally required. If this is not a body that has a legal mandate and that is following the open meeting law, then it is a group of volunteers who agree to share their time in a particular way. That can include time limits, that can include a number of turns per discussion item. Not everyone remembers everything the first time they speak. We also may not have heard the acknowledgement we wanted to the first time we speak. It may be useful to allow multiple turns and to feed on one another and to have the kind of discussion that I've already seen be really positive and constructive in just my 4 or 5 months on this committee. So I just want to offer that there is a lot of possibility here for structure that is separate from a legal set of requirements. I'm a former regulator, in case you can't tell, but I've also facilitated a lot of voluntary discussions and policy discussions, all kinds of discussions. And really what it comes down to is transparency and shared understanding and trust. And we have that opportunity to create that with each other. And that also lends whatever, the process ends up being. Understanding process, again, is here being described as something voluntary. that lends itself to the public as well in terms of transparency and trust and expectations. So all of this is to say, I so appreciate the opportunity to directly interface with the committee members and especially the RTC staff. I don't want the takeaway from this discussion to be, well, it's just too difficult, and so we just have to shut everybody up. There are so many opportunities for us to keep practicing the meaningful inclusion that I've already seen here, and I would like to just encourage it to blossom with appreciation and with these kinds of possibilities that can happen.
Yeah, I really agree with what you described, and I'm a big process person too, and I think there are opportunities to do that that could really help with the functioning of this group.
I agree
Right.
with everything we said too, Pana.
Thank you, everyone. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, we're moving on to item number 8, member announcement agenda items for future CMAC meetings. Sitting?
I am just reiterating that Bill said at the beginning that there will be I don't know what the right words are, but choosing a new chair and vice chair at the next meeting. Is that still on the agenda?
Yes.
Okay, and then just clarity on how that is done for everybody who is here. That would be really helpful.
We will provide that. We'll provide structure. It's clear that there's a request, as I'm reading the group, for more structure and how you do things with a desire to have opportunity to engage and talk, yet be respectful of the process. Make a process that's valuable to everybody. Like where failure would be all of you feeling frustrated, or a majority of you. Failure would be the staff being frustrated and not wanting to come to this group. So that's failure. Success, I think, is everybody feeling like the time was well spent and the information that you gave to us is moving forward and being presented in an honest and clear way. And a lot of it really comes down, of course, to communication. How people say things sometimes affects what they're saying. And so if this group's functioning well, then people would question when somebody says something if it was intended to be differently. And that's how the collective group works together. And to the extent you all, with our staff, are working effectively, that's probably going to be the most influential in the decision-making process.
Sorry, so my specific question is how, unless that is not going to be provided to us until the next meeting, my question is how are those decisions going to be made? If this body is meant to speak with each other and needs to figure out how to do that and wants to agree on a few things, I think it's important that it doesn't come from somewhere else to be agreed to, right? Like some framework is obviously helpful. You run a lot of meetings, you do a lot of committees, like that's helpful. But I think the group needs to agree to how it wants to converse. And then the specific question about chair and vice chair is who makes that decision.
So the chair and vice chair will be made by all of you. We will present to you, which is probably going to be the way this traditionally happens, which is one of you will make a motion for someone to be chair, and then the others will be asked if they have somebody to be a chair. And then you will take a vote to see which one gets the most votes. If there's 2 people who fall or want to be chair and 2 people are nominated, then we'll do the same thing for the vice chair. And generally, which we haven't really formed these yet, but I can pretty much tell you how it's probably going to come forward from us. The vice chair would traditionally be the person that then steps in when the chair term is done. So that's the way I'm foreseeing it to be presented. So it won't be us coming and telling you, here's who's going to be the chair. It's going to be you, the group of you, deciding who's chair and who's vice chair.
Cool. And then I don't know if it needs to be added or noted anywhere, but any like additional backups of people who would be willing to run the meeting in case neither person is there, or an agreement that RTC staff running the meeting is also fine. Just, for the just in case when both people are not available.
Well, we will always, again, given the structure of this group, we will always step in to help. If we have a chair and a vice chair, neither of them are there, for the efficiency of the meeting, we will probably get it through that meeting by replicating what would happen with your chair or vice chair. But, hopefully having two people, there won't be situations where you don't have either a chair or vice chair to run the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, great. I'd like to jump back just a little bit to the agenda. And if the agenda is already set, how can we have an open forum? Because I myself am a bus driver, and so far we've never discussed anything really relating to our bus system. Nothing about bus stops, nothing about routes, nothing about the time frames. And I thought when I got into this, that was basically what we'd be talking about. And we're not. And there's a lot of work that needs to be done that myself and Michael Lansborough can bring to the table. And how do we get that onto the agenda?
So the short answer is it'll be coming. I don't know, Jim, if you want to give a prelude to when.
Yeah, so two thoughts. First is we have a quarterly requirement to report to the group on bus stops and shelters and so on. That report was made at our January meeting. Ed Park, who Earl, basically gave the report, and the next report is scheduled for next month at the April meeting. And so our staff person, Cy, will talk about the shelters we've installed, the stops that we've moved, and so on. And then secondly, anytime we do have service changes, we do bring those service changes to this group. We did that most recently last month, and we'll continue to do that moving forward.
Right. I understand that, but I know that we're going to be doing service changes to the Route 21 upcoming in May and a few other service changes. But, there are other avenues about our bus stops that I think we should bring forward in the CMAC before they get brought into effect. And I know that there's a lot of members of the CMAC that would like to comment before they happen. I thought that was the process of the CMAC, to discuss upcoming changes before they happen.
So that is correct. Just a suggestion for specific things like stops and shelters, please bring them next month to our meeting when the staff person will be here and who directly oversees that and can listen to you, and we'll respond to anything you have.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
This is Damien. I just want to piggyback on that real quick. Earl, I absolutely agree. I think this would be the best place for the community who uses buses, including myself. I ride my bike as a primary mode, but I use the bus secondary, especially if the hill is too high. For us to be able to communicate one another and talk about these things in a forum that's better than the yellow limit marker in front of a bus when my bus driver's driving. Honestly, that's the number one place that I talk to bus network issues is when I'm riding the bus. And so, yeah, I totally think this is a wonderful opportunity for the community who have bus riding concerns can discuss these issues with the bus drivers themselves, and so that way RTC can be there and listening to it. Absolutely.
Suting, do you have another comment?
Yeah, so I know that this membership is comprised of RTC ride users, RTC access users, bike and pedestrian representatives, general and transit. I'm wondering if for consideration for future agenda items that we like have those different categories on the agenda to make sure that if there's any discussion that needs to be had, we have them. I think they should come with time limits, and that the order should change for every meeting. So does that make sense? So if there's like 5 categories, you list the 5 categories, we allot a certain amount of time to make sure that some of those get discussed. And then at the next meeting, you would start at the next one. And then the ones that were discussed get shifted to the bottom, so that there is time for some of, because everybody here is coming with experience, either with other people or with organizations. And sometimes those are appropriate to bring up during a presentation discussion. And sometimes it just needs to be brought up because it's a thing that's happening in the community. But that would be one way to address these different concerns without being bogged down with, only talking about it, extending it, forever. Nobody wants to be here forever. I understand that. I don't either. But making sure that we hit some of them, some of the time will, I think, be a good start to making sure that that conversation is happening.
Totally agree.
Thank you. Any other members? Okay, hearing none, we're moving on to item number 9, RTC ride access staff items.
Nothing for me, Schwinn, but happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Hearing none, public comment. Do we have any public comments?
Hi, Kelly Orr. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Good evening. I just wanted to bring to public transportation, sorry, everybody. I am the community director for a new apartment complex out in Red Rock. And my concern is usability for our bus stops and maybe even getting one closer. I think 1/4 mile is the closest one on Silver Lake. And then just more accessible bike lanes pushed out here. But I know we're I think it crosses the street on my property where we're county, but then across the street is city. Is that something that RTC takes into account with the roads and access for, transit support?
So Kelly, are you at Red Rock and Silver Lake or close to that?
Yes, I am Red Rock and Silver Lake behind the Shell gas station.
Okay. We do have flex ride service in that area. And I'd be happy to make sure we get some flyers and brochures out to your residents so they can learn about it, or even I don't know if you do like resident meetings or something. We'd be happy to come out and talk to your folks and teach them how to use the service. We could look at a fixed route change, but at least in the short term, we'd be happy to educate about a flex ride.
That would be wonderful. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
May I ask a very quick question?
Sure.
Last month we heard about transit changes that I think are going to come out May 4th. Have they already been publicly announced? And if not, when will they be?
So they were publicly approved by the board at the last meeting, and we are working on getting the word out. And sometimes it's a balancing act because if we go out too soon, people start looking for it too soon. So it's a little bit of a balancing act, but we are definitely working on getting the word out.
And I have one quick question for you, Jim. I don't know if you have the answer to this or someone else from RTC, but I have heard that if someone schedules a flex ride, even hours in advance, as close as 10 minutes to the pickup time, RTC will sometimes cancel, saying, no, we cannot provide this service to you. And then they will call them a Uber and pay for it. Am I understanding this correctly? Is that accurate?
Partially. So basically, we do not allow pre-scheduling on FlexRide. It's all sort of ad hoc, spur of the moment, with no pre-scheduling. But we do have a relationship with Lyft, and now Uber both, where if our flex ride is too busy and we know that it will be a very extended wait time, we will ask the customer, do you want us to push this out to Uber or Lyft instead? Pretty much 100% of the time they say yes. And so we will push that out to Uber or Lyft.
So, but that means that RTC is relegating its services and paying for a third-party competitor rather than putting that money into expanding the bus service. I just think that's so unsustainable if you're trying to save money.
It's actually pretty cost effective, and we have priced that out. But obviously our preference is to do it ourselves. But we do have finite resources in terms of vehicles and drivers.
All right, thank you.
All right, no more comments. Moving on to item number 11, adjournment. Do I have a motion? Oh, I'm sorry. I see someone in the attendee.
Does that apply for RTC Access riders? The free Uber if they're late?
No, we're on the phone.
So no, Access is a totally different animal because of the accessibility requirements, and it really varies from customer to customer. But in long story short, it's a very different type of service than FlexRide.
Is it going to be free then?
Real quick, caller, would you mind stating your name for the record?
I'm sorry, my name is Juan Martinez.
Oh, good to hear from you, Juan.
Yeah, so if we push trips from, I'm not sure how our process for pushing trips from Access out to Ride or Lyft works, but I can find out for you, Juan.
If I may make a oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
This is Juan Martinez. Thank you. I'll be waiting for your answer.
I have a possible suggestion for this. I don't know if I'm opening a can of worms. I'm just saying that considering that FlexRide is such a new service and Access was a previous type of service, perhaps you might want to look at where the two different services mesh and combine them into one service in order to provide the same type of service, but give preference for those who have disabilities, things like that. I think that might actually streamline things.
So we are looking at paratransit and microtransit intermingling now. Right now, it's two different pieces of software, and the thought is we could possibly put those two pieces of software into one. I'll preface it by saying that microtransit, which is our FlexRide, and ADA Transit, which is our Access, have two completely different sets of legal requirements. So we need to make sure that we're correctly following the path, even though we do, you're right, Damon, would have some benefits from intermingling the two. So we just have to be careful in how we do it.
Got it. Thank you.
But we are thinking it through.
Hi, I'm sorry. Is this public comment portion of this meeting?
I think so, yeah. Go ahead.
So this is Johan Martinez. Just well, I know that during public comment, you probably can't answer because I'm public. But for micromobility, transportation vehicles, just one, I know that you all check mark the ADA compliance, but and accessibility portion, but I think we need to do better. Our famous Mayor Shibi always says that the usability of the vehicle. So I mean, you don't know because you don't ride paratransit like I do, but there are various different types of wheelchairs. And so I just want to throw it out there that when you do purchase the micromobility, sorry for the background noise, guys, I'm on Access. So that you do order those vehicles, that it is what is the word? All types of wheelchairs, because we've been on one where one of the vans bills that you guys all do for access, and they were not able to transport a lady with a motorized vehicle. She had to sit outside and wait 30 minutes for somebody to go get her, and that's unacceptable. And especially when you guys are getting lots of money from the feds. So I just want to throw that out there, and thank you everyone, and thank you, Damien. You're the rock star. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Damien, do you still have comments?
Oh, no, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay.
I just wanted to say thank you to Dora. That was very kind.
Thank you. So
And I do want to point out that Juan's phone number has been active and part of the quorum for probably most of the meeting. Just want to point that out because I don't know if you might have accidentally left him out because he wasn't here for the roll call.
yeah, we'll check on that and
Okay.
make sure. Item 11, adjournment. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Second.
I'll approve.
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you
Bye.
all.
Pizza party.
Thank you.
Thank you.